And my opening quip there, Richard Donaldson, are you with us? That was not a handoff problem. That was really, are you with us? Maybe if you're paying attention to the weather across the U.S. and you're in the utility industry, so you probably are. He's got a foot of snow back home. So let's talk a little bit about the storm and how you're managing.
Yeah, so I am with you, luckily. I wasn't sure I was going to be here. When I got up this morning around 4 a.m., it was 10 degrees back home in Charlotte, North Carolina. And if I could, we had a big day at Duke Energy, and it wasn't because we had earnings released or any historical achievement, but we set load records in 3 of the states we operate in, and the 26,000 men and women that work at Duke Energy, they did exactly what they do. They got the mail out, and we served every single one of our customers. So I would just like a round of applause. And I want to be clear, I did my part. Right before I left for the airport, I turned the thermostat down to 55, and I left, and I have not heard from my wife all day.
Yeah, okay. Maybe that'll be a follow-up question as to how that went over when the family woke up. But if I take a step back and not talk about thermostat settings, but let's talk about how we can use data to improve the visibility out at the edge. What is Duke's current strategy, and what's your roadmap for enhancing real-time data usage?
Yeah, this is a really important investment area for us, and ironically, it started with our Itron meters. We had a business case to put meters, AMI meters, everywhere in our service territories, really on the business case of not having to drive out and measure meters. It was that simple. But I don't think anyone at the time understood the treasure trove of data that was going to introduce into our thought process. And so fast forward to today, where we literally have dozens of applications that we have built in-house that do everything from analyze usage data from the meter all the way back. Look at the number of intelligent devices we have that you referenced earlier that are on this honking grid is just incredible. And we're pulling all that data back to do a couple things. We're forecasting better, not just near term, but long term. And then we're planning better. So we're looking at, we want to make investments so that we have generation and electricity delivered at the right place and at the right time. And that is a complex set of equations. We have, millions and millions of power flow calculations we run, and just a nod to the cloud. We have, I think AWS is in the crowd, and we have a good partnership with them. We used to run our, I think 20% of our systems calculations, and it took us 6 weeks. And now we run the whole system in about 6 hours. So soak on that for a little while. Go cloud.
Yeah. So let's take a view from the notion that, okay, you're a regulated utility. You've got long CapEx cycles. What kind of strategies can you employ to increase your pace of innovation, but respect the model that you work in? How can we use technology to solve that problem?
Yeah, it's an important question because especially when you look at big capital investments, you are faced with tough challenges like you might run multiple election cycles before you get an asset in the ground. I mean, nuclear is a good example of that. But fortunately, when you're on the AI and the data and the software side, your order of magnitude for investments is significantly less and your time to market is significantly less. So we're able to do a couple things there. We're able to have a smattering of small bets that we're making to make sure we understand where they're going to pay off. But then we can afford to make a couple big bets because they're not really big bets in the grand scheme of things. And so that's allowed us to do a couple things. One is experiment, particularly with AI, but also to socialize. AI is very much a cultural endeavor as much as it is a technological endeavor. And so the more little things we do across the entire enterprise, the more folks are getting their hands on the tech and getting comfortable with it, and we're seeing those ideas boom that you described earlier.
Right. So if we move beyond technical specs, what are the top 2 things that you think are absolutely non-negotiable for utility leaders? What do you need to ask before you adopt a new technology?
Yeah, so there's many. I would say first off, it's got to be secure. Whatever we look at has to be secure. I probably talk to our CISO every single day, and we make sure that before we even write the first line of code, we're thinking about, how could this be compromised? How is it protecting all the data we have access to? including controlling the grid. Second of all is we have to have a value proposition. And, I got into technology because it's really fun and there's some really cool stuff that you can do, especially today. And I think about 10 years ago when I was out at this very conference, I think here, and the face of the utility looks very different today than it did then. And our CEO likes to say we're the cool kids now. And so I think, it's okay to dabble lightly, but if you're going to make a meaningful investment, you have to know what the ROI is on that. And then I'll add a third for a bonus is, I run technology for Duke Energy, and there's a lot of things that in technology we can do on behalf of the business. But what we can't do is be the business. We can't provide that subject matter expertise. And really, without that, you're not going to get very far into any use case that you pursue. No matter how smart you are, how technically savvy you are, you've got to have that business subject matter expertise.
Very good. Richard, thank you so much for making the trip and being with us. Thank you.